It's all dehumanization. And this shooting last night, they are going to use it as a chilling effect to silence all of us. And I not saying I'm nearly as afraid as the people that are enduring a literal genocide, but I am afraid. What are they going to start monitoring our media? Are they going to come for press people like us that are covering it? Are they going to come for the Abby Martins of the world that are fucking heroes? Well, that's the goal.
But they already have. That's why people like Richard Medhurst and Max Blumenthal get held up and detained and or arrested. And yes, that is what they're going to do. And there is a risk for speaking out. And that is the whole point, is to try to shut it down. That's what they're going to try to do. But yeah, and to make people be scared and shut up.
Abby Marin is one of the toughest people I've seen and is the true definition of a journalist, despite what a lot of other people do. Jordan's a journalist. You know, we know who the real journalists are. And Abby, despite her stoic nature, had this to say to Zeynab the other day, and this is something that should really stick. It should really get to people regarding Zionists.
We saw the writing on the wall. We knew that the status quo couldn't hold. We knew that the Democratic Party was the inevitability, would pave the way for Trump. And now here we are. We're in Trumpism. We're living the authoritarian nightmare that we all knew was coming. And to your point, I mean, Palestinians are the first, but they're not the last. This is a warning shot. And it's a testing ground for all the surveillance technology, all the Silicon Valley overlords who now curate our reality. All of this is coming home to roost.
I also wanted to add that I think that part of what happened with that shooting is also very potentially a false flag. I think that they are realizing they're losing the PR war globally. I think that they're panicking. And when I say they, I mean like the Zios. I think that you see it within Benjamin Netanyahu communicating with his people and saying, look, I have to give them a little bit of aid. If I don't give them a little bit of aid, then they won't let us keep killing the people. So I got to give them a little bit of aid. That's what I think when you see this kind of thing happen. To me, it screams false flag. It screams we're trying to get the sympathy back. We're trying to change the discussion, and we're trying to distract. That's what it says to me.
Also, well, they fired at ambassadors. Oh, go ahead, Peter. But they fired at ambassadors the day before.
Yeah, you've got the firing at the EU diplomats, and on top of that, the Zionists make it. That's the thing I give them credit for. They are so freaking transparent in how they coordinate it. You can't help but think it was a false flag because of how they're trying to exploit what happened. The fact that they were trying to push the narratives out there immediately, which of course weren't true. Shocker. But that's why it is so detrimental to allow this to go on. We have to nip this in the butt. And like I said, they're going to exploit it. They're going to use it for all it's worth. HR 867 is going to get another vote, which is the anti-Israel boycott bill. That's going to come up for a vote again. But we have to crush this ideology. And I'm going to play one more clip from Abby, which explains why this ideology has to fall. It's not even a question of whether people will identify as Zionists. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You will not be pulling the levers of power in the United States anymore. That is our mission, is to completely dismantle their power vacuum in Washington, D.C. and around the world.
Palestinian lives are non-negotiable to me. I'm sorry. Like I agree that Trump is very scary domestically. He's a fascist. He ran on a fascist platform, but I in good conscience cannot vote for genocide of my brothers and sisters. Do you understand that? And how dare you tell Palestinians and lecture to them that they should have? That's sick.
The bar's in hell. The bar was in hell. And so why is it so shocking now that we have rampant fascism? That we've just fully gone in the direction of rampant fascism.
Exactly, Zeynab. When you normalize this kind of behavior, especially abroad, this is the U.S. empire is a global fascist military dictatorship, actually, and tens of millions of people are living under its boot and suffering every day. And the people who are conscious of that and have international solidarity and have a lens that's a perspective to see outside of our country already knew that.
Yeah. I always think that's one of the biggest problems we have in this country is most people don't have a passport. Most people have never left. Most people have never been anywhere else. So we're really in a bubble in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that any fault of their own. I'm not saying that like most people can't afford to do those things. It's not like, but that sort of, I feel ocean of isolation allows us to just be so much more ignorant of other countries and other places. Also, the fact that we don't get paid holiday. I would argue, like, there's countries where people don't make a lot of money, but they still get paid holiday and they could still actually go places and do things. So, I mean,
and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to get a passport. You know, it's $150 doesn't sound like a lot.
No, it is.
And you have to travel, you have to do all this other stuff. So it can cost up to like a couple $100 or several $100s to get a passport once you've done everything you have, jump through all the hoops you have to get one.
Yeah. So it's just not available to me. And I get that. And flying from here to anywhere else is also really, cost prohibitive. Whereas if you live in the UK, it's pretty cheap to go to France. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's just so many more options to cultural, cross-pollination that we do not have here. No offense to my Canadian friends. But, like we're somewhat limited in that. We have very poor worldview. And we are very, we think we're all that in a bag of chips, and we're really not.
Despite that, 70% of now the number is increasing. The majority of people in this country want us to stop bombing the babies.
Oh, yeah.
To think that that the number is only 70%. 30% think we should bomb babies. That's nice.
You're always half empty, aren't you, Peter? You got to look at it. You got to be half empty, don't you?
Marco Rubio has revoked thousands of student visas from campuses where these pro-Hamas terrorists. This is coming from Ayal Yacobi, who I said is one of the very worst Zionist Mossad-employed people, have taken over buildings. And it's only going to get worse. But I will tell you, while it gets worse, other people start to wake up. I didn't think that the ultimate fence sitter in corporate media, who of course is Piers Morgan, would somehow have his epiphany moment and actually call out the Israel government. But he did do this, and he did it with Mehdi Hasan the other day.
Can respond. So much gaslighting from the very beginning. John has been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as an embed. I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving and maiming. And you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian journalists who are there have been killed in record numbers. Of course, Piers, you're right. They want to hide what they're doing. That's why they're killing the journalists there and blocking the journalists from coming in. This idea that he's been on the ground. Yeah, I did interview a doctor, a British plastic surgeon, Dr. Tom Patoka. And by the way, he wasn't in the European hospital because the hospital got bombed by Israel. So he was in another hospital, and he talked to me about how he has to treat patients who have maggots in their wounds. He has to treat patients without limbs. He has to treat children. I've interviewed multiple doctors on the ground in Gaza, actually in Gaza, not hanging around with Israeli military. And they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors. They've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill civilians. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted at the International Criminal Court.
Who is this fuck that's shaking his head no?
He's there to represent the Zios. To keep it balanced for both sides.
We're not doing that.
No.
20 months later, you're still not doing that?
He's with them. He's one of I forget what his name, like who he is his title.
I think he works directly. I don't think he was an IDF person because him and Mehdi got in a back and forth, I believe. And he was like, I can't remember now, but he's definitely a representative. He's a spokesperson for Israel.
Okay, yeah, that's what I mean. He's a Zio mouthpiece.
Fair enough.
for precisely those charges, for killing, willful killing of Palestinians, for murder and persecution. That's why they've been indicted. That's why every human rights group in the world says war crimes are being committed. They've killed people holding white flags. We've seen it with our own eyes. They've bombed buildings without warning with families inside, like the Al-Dos family that I often cite in October 2023. They've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people. They have killed 7 aid workers in a clearly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy. They've bombed World Food Programme convoys, leading to Cindy McCain, the wife of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, to come out and condemn Israel for attacking aid workers. John wants you to ignore Cindy McCain and British and American doctors and human rights groups and your own lying eyes watching people with white flags being gunned down. He wants you to believe him and his Israeli military minders.
Okay, but can I also, and as much as I do appreciate that content, remind everyone that Mehdi did shill for Kamala in the end.
Of course.
And in the end, he fell in line. And it was very disappointing because I was like pleasantly surprised with how outspoken he had been up until that point. And then he fell in line.
Mhm.
They always get their mind right at the 11 o'clock hour because for them it's a career. That's the bottom line.
He wouldn't even take the stance that like Mike Figueiredo took, which is, you know, I may get desperate enough to vote for her, but I don't know. I do not blame a single person who would not vote for her. And if she loses, I can completely understand why, because she won't change on this and it's horrendous. And she was an architect of this, you know, so he didn't. I saw some people like the, oh, I can't remember her name. Her husband does Bad Hasbara.
Oh, Francesca
Fiorelatini. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
No,
Fiorelatini, I think.
Yeah.
But she really struggled because she wanted to be coconut pilled or whatever. And then, but at the same time, she was like, you know, I've been criticizing her, but there's other things that are going on in the world, but I don't want to, you know, going on in our country, and we have to think about domestic policy. And she did this whole 3-hour live stream where people were kind of giving her hell about it. But Mehdi could have taken the stance that Mike Figueiredo took, which is I'm not going to tell anyone how to damn well vote because we have 2 genocidal, you know, candidates on the ticket, right? And I can understand somebody being afraid enough to vote for her because of what the type of fascism that's coming down the pike. But at the same time, she's complicit in genocide. But no, instead he decided to shill for Kamala and minimize her impact and make arguments like she was just VP. How much power does a VP really have? I'm so sick of shit like that. Like if you're up there, you're on the hill, you're one of the most, you're fucking vice president, you're one of the most powerful people on this planet. And you're not going to speak up, you're not going to do something because of some political wrangling you have to do. No, fuck that.
And this also has more to do with Piers Morgan, because I will tell you, I will never forgive Mehdi Hasan doing a hit job on Matt Taibbi just because Taibbi's politics doesn't line up with his. And Taibbi, and people could disagree with him on a number of different things, but that guy's a freaking journalist. And I am just tired of people not wanting to support somebody because their politics are different. Whatever they are, at the end of the day, there is a corporate structure that is in place that is breaking at the seams. Let it break. Because even if Mehdi is wrong on everything else, he can get Piers Morgan to say this. This is good enough to at least know that the needle is moving in the direction it needs to on this issue.
Welcome back to Uncensored. Listen, you and I have talked about this war in Gaza for ever since it started, this phase of the 75-year conflict. And I have resisted going as far as you have done in your criticism of the Israeli government. I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians are being killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends. other than if you look at what Smodrich has been saying, probably the most right-wing member of a very right-wing government, he is talking in a genocidal language about kicking all the Palestinians out. So I think you and I have reached a place in the last few weeks where we are in agreement. But my question for you, Mehdi, is how does this end?
I don't know the answer to that question, Piers, and I'm glad we're in agreement. I'm
Glad you joined us on the correct side of history. Thank you for that. Jeez Louise. And the smug guy sitting there. This way.
Well, don't worry, pal. Your check's in the mail,
Ugh.
covered in Palestinian blood, but the check is there. And you can collect it.
The
Think about
gaslighting's insane.
It is. It is.
Well, they say that about 4% of the population can be classified as sociopathic. Well, if that's the case, then
Of a normal population.
yes.
Okay, but Israel, it's not a normal population.
Well, I don't think John Spencer's an Israeli, but he's definitely part of the payroll of the Israel lobby.
Then that
That's-
counts.
I
Then
guess.
you're a Zio. You're on the payroll.
Well, no, I'm saying I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is, like, what percentage of sociopaths end up supporting the cause that is the Israel colonialization project? Probably pretty high. And in this case, is it refreshing to see that Piers Morgan is on the right side of history? Shouldn't have taken this long. But what it shows me is that he's aware that the tide has turned in such a way that if you're still defending Israel at this point, you're going to get marked. Like, that's basically what's going to happen. You're going to be marked, and you should be cast out and forgotten, as far as I'm concerned. That's what should happen to every last one of these sons of bitches.
Well, you'll
Everyone.
notice a bunch of people now jumping ship and trying to come down. Like, that's what they're doing over in Europe now. Oh, maybe we should just, because, people aren't liking it so much. All of these people I believe are seeing the writing on the wall, and they want to come out on top of this, and they're not, because we have the receipts. This isn't Nazi Germany, where we don't have the ability to show what everybody was doing at the time. We know what everybody was doing. We know where you stood. We know what you said. We know what you printed. And as far as I'm concerned, I gave everybody at most a 3-week grace period after October 7th to get on the right side of history on this. And anybody who hasn't since then, you are just wrong. And you will have to live with that. There's no, yes, you can get onto the right side of history, and good for you if you do. To me, you don't exist. I will not deal with anybody who did not get their head straight pretty quickly.